Hi folks, welcome back. Thank you for watching. Please do hit subscribe if you haven't done so yet. It really does help when you do that. So today folks, firstly, apologies if I look a bit sweaty on camera today. We're having a heat wave here in the UK at the moment, and in a small room with all the doors and windows shut and hot tube amps, it smells like a gym in here. So sorry if I'm a little bit shiny on camera today. Anyway, today is new guitar day for me, and I'm really excited to show you this one. This here is a Corsa Manalishi. Now, what in the world is a Manalishi aside from something that looks like a Gibson Les Paul? Well, Corsa guitars have an interesting story. They're run by a chap called Larry Corsa, who I believe is a one-man operation. And he is something of a Gibson Les Paul burst aficionado. He's owned original bursts over the years, he's really studied that sound, he spent some time with Peter Green's Greeny burst, which we'll talk more about in a minute. So he really understands those guitars and what makes them tick. But along the way, what he spotted is you can get actual bursts or custom shop reissues, R8s and R9s and things, some of which are absolutely godly. But others sound kind of normal, and a few of them sound outright bad, to be honest. And I should preface this whole video today by saying I'm not sure how much of this is all marketing hyperbole and how much of it is actual fact. This is what Larry says. Everyone will have a different view on how much to read into it. But anyway, so that got him thinking about what made some of these guitars just worlds apart from others. And he went on a bit of an odyssey. And along the way, he discovered a line of Gibson Les Pauls called the Les Paul Fadeds that they brought out probably about 20 years ago now. And those were essentially budget Les Pauls. They had a satin finish, they were weight relieved, they had cheap pickups, cheap electronics. But what he found is they were some of the most consistently good sounding guitars. Of course, you get bursts and custom shops that absolutely trounce them, but then you could get ones that really didn't. But these were consistent, they had that kind of consistent tone. And that got Larry wondering why that was. And we'll talk more in a minute about his theories on that. But what he started doing was buying up Les Paul Fadeds and modifying them with better hardware, better pickups, better electronics, and selling them on as kind of pimped up Les Paul Fadeds. And they all sounded absolutely stunning. But then Gibson discontinued the Les Paul Faded, so he decided to start building guitars himself, and the Manalishi was born. Now, if you know your Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac, you'll get the reference Manalishi. Larry's whole thing is Peter's Greeny burst, that nasally out of phase middle position. And as I said, he spent some time with that guitar in his hands over the years, so he really knows that instrument better than most people, aside from perhaps Kirk Hammett nowadays. And he has really studied how to get that sort of sound out of an instrument. So this is kind of based on the Les Paul Faded, but with a few enhancements. And his guitars are routinely spoken about in the same breath as custom shop R9s. But this isn't a historic reissue. It does have some differences, but Larry says he builds guitars to sound as good as they can and sound as close to Greeny's burst as possible. So it's not completely vintage correct, but it sounds wonderful. It's a very light guitar because it's weight relieved, and he says it's weight relieved not for actual weight, but for tone. So if you hear here, solid, it's scooped out up here. But this is one of the most resonant guitars I've ever played. It's super light, it's about 7 pounds 2 ounces. And if I compare it to my Les Paul Standard Unplugged, you'll hear just how much difference there is in terms of volume and overall timbre of the sound compared to a stock Gibson. So this really is just a louder, more resonant, more sustaining experience. So there's something about it, even unplugged, that really works. Now, I have changed the electronics in this guitar for a couple of reasons. Firstly, and I appreciate that this is sacrilegious holding this particular instrument, I'm not wild about the Peter Green out of phase middle position sound. This was actually the best sounding middle position out of phase sound I've ever played. But the standard Les Paul middle position is a sound I use all the time. I really like that sound, especially for clean tones. And I always miss it whenever I've experimented with out of phase neck pickups before. So I've swapped the pickups out. They were actually brilliant sounding pickups, the stock ones. I might put them back in at some point. I'm not selling them, they're stored away. They were uncovered Zebra PAF replicas, essentially, with the neck magnet flip. So I could either flip the neck magnet back around or swap them out for some different pickups. And I had these lying around waiting to go into guitar. They're some of my favourite PAF replicas. These are the ThroBak SLE-101s. So I've put those in this guitar and they really do suit the overall sound. And I've changed the pots and the caps out too. Paper and oil caps have gone in, as I usually do. And I've put some VIPots in, the slightly overvalued Centralab replicas. The main reason for doing that was actually because Larry did something right, which most other guitar manufacturers don't do. He used left-handed pots. Now, if you're a regular to this channel, you'll know that I use right-handed pots wired correctly, but they work the opposite way around relative to the body of the guitar. So full volume for me is kind of towards the neck rather than back towards the base of the guitar. And that's so I can experiment with different pots and use any pot I want. I'm just used to that in all of my guitars. So I was forever turning this thing down when I wanted to turn it up, and it was just backwards for me. So it's got the VI pots in now. They really suit PAFs. I like a nice crispy guitar sound. Now, in terms of the finish of this guitar then, this is one of Larry's real theories about why those fadeds sounded consistently good when other guitars varied quite a lot, was they didn't use grain filler on the body. And he doesn't use grain filler on his. So if you look at the back of this guitar, you'll see that the grain pattern is actually really prominent. But he says that once you fill the grain of mahogany, it really stifles the sound of the instrument. And you might have been able to hear that in that Unplugged example, because my Gibson Les Paul is grain filled, has a very silky smooth finish, which this doesn't have, but it did sound kind of deadened compared to this. So the sustain and resonance of this guitar is beautiful, and Larry says not using grain filler is one of the big reasons for that. Now, in terms of the top here, this is I think it's a tobacco burst finish, obviously no pick guards, and this is what he calls his NTN finish, which is next to nothing. So it's a very, very thin nitro finish, and it's not super polished. It's not completely satin either. If you've ever been to a guitar shop, or you're lucky enough to own one, and you've picked up a Nick Huber Orca, one of their sort of burster likes, this finish reminds me of that. It's not purely satin, but it's not particularly glossy either. But it doesn't look exactly like a vintage Gibson Les Paul, but I think it looks brilliant as well. And the flame to the top, to get all Spinal Tap, is absolutely gorgeous too. So overall then, this is a very light, very resonant, very, very good sounding Les Paul that isn't a Les Paul. So today what I'm going to do is put this guitar through its paces. I'm going to plug it into a variety of different amplifiers and primarily just crank the amps up brutally loud here in the room. I might throw some vintage correct effects on, like maybe like a tape style delay or like a range master, but I'm mainly just going to absolutely deafen myself in this room and get some classic burst tones out of this Corsa Manalishi. So, without further ado, folks, here we go. we are, folks. Now, please do comment underneath. Let me know what you thought of this guitar today. Did you like how it sounded? Did you think it sounded like an actual burst? Which amp did you prefer it with? I love chatting nerdy guitar stuff with you folks down in the comments section. Now, for me, and in terms of all the guitars that I've personally played over the years, I think this is the burstiest burst of them all. This really does have that sound. It has the sustain. It isn't overbearing in the low end. It has just the right amount of bite in the mid-range. It is just a glorious experience, and especially with these throwbacks in, playing lead, it's just wanting to erupt into harmonic feedback all the time. You can hear every single kind of harmonic overtone on top of the note. It's a wonderful experience playing this guitar. You can get the action super low, it sounds right, it's comfortable, it's light, it's resonant, it's everything that you want in this style of guitar. But as always, folks, those are just my thoughts, so please do let me know yours underneath. I'd love to find out what you think of this guitar. Does the slight deviation away from vintage construction methods bother you? Did you like how it sounded? All of that stuff, please do let me know underneath, because I'm really keen to get your thoughts on this instrument. So thank you ever so much for watching, folks. I hope this video was interesting and useful for you. Please do carry on subscribing. I know I always say it, but it makes a huge difference when you hit that subscribe button. And I will see you very, very soon. Bye-bye.